Hello again. Thank you very much for joining me here on Movie Ninja. And tonight, I'm going to be talking about the new Netflix series, A Tale Dark and Grim. Now, most of us are fairly familiar with the story of Hansel and Gretel. Two children that, for several reasons, are discarded by their parents, wander in the deep dark woods, are discovered by a candy-obsessed witch, and then the witch is defeated by the children. We've heard this in countless tellings and retellings. However, A Tale Dark and Grim actually changes and expands the story of Hansel and Gretel in a number of considerable and beneficial ways, I think. A Tale Dark and Grim, being an adaptation of the trilogy of children's books by, I'm going to have to look up his name, Adam Gidwitz. Gidwitz or Gidwitz. I'm not entirely sure how the author pronounces his name. But this is a variation on the story of Hansel and Gretel. In this telling, Hansel and Gretel are a prince and princess. They are still forced to leave their home, but not for the conventional reasons. When they leave their royal life behind, they go on a quest to find the perfect family. And afterwards, if they are unable to locate said perfect family, then the story goes off on tales of survival and misadventures through the land of Grimm, the setting of the story, the land of Grimm, and including a number of supernatural enemies and allies, come across their path. This series is so much stronger than I was expecting it to be. I didn't quite know what to expect. Netflix, in terms of family entertainment or general audiences entertainment, has more often than not been disappointing, I feel. That opinion varies depending on who you ask, but in this case, it far exceeded any expectation that I had. You have interesting, well-developed, well-thought-out variations of a number of Grimm fairy tales, from the Brothers Grimm, of course. And a lot of these they're gruesome to a point, but the violence in each story has a very well-defined purpose. And I feel that in not pulling their punches with regards to these particular stories, I feel that it is much more respectful to the key demographic audience, and it's respectful to the larger general audience. This is not a series that parents will have to force themselves to watch, in essence. And this is something that it has very good writing, the characters are very well thought out, and it's very funny. It was much more funny than I was expecting. You hear the title, A Tale Dark and Grim, and you expect it to be a kind of melancholy drama, and it's not. It actually has a lot of very well-written humor and jokes. It reminds me, to a degree, of some of the better writing that Jim Henson and his company used to write for The Muppet Show. If I had to make a similar comparison, I would say that this is like if the Zucker brothers made a animated family show. And I specifically say the Zucker brothers because the jokes come at you ready and quick. Almost to the point where it can be kind of overwhelming at times. You kind of just want to just have the story just be told to you without being bombarded with jokes. But now, I have to make a distinction here. Now, when I say the Zucker brothers, that refers to a very specific team of writers and directors. The Zucker brothers who did The Naked Gun, Top Secret, a number of adult themed comedies. but it's not, there's nothing adult. And when I say that, I mean there's no blue humor, there's no raunchy humor, there's no tasteless euphemisms or anything like that. It's just that I make the comparison because, similar to the way the Zucker brothers would write, once again, the jokes come at you in high volume. So, just bear that in mind. And once again, something that you kind of see with some of these, like family, like entertainment, is that when you want to fit in values and lessons and humor for the younger audience, you have this block of writing and this block of jokes. But when bearing in mind that people of an older age demographic are going to watch this, well, then you have to throw this in there, and it doesn't really feel that segmented. It doesn't really feel as if this was written with 2 or 3 audiences in mind. This is just something that is a very comfortable. If this was a film, if this was a movie, I would say that this is a very comfortable PG. Now, for those who are in territories that have different rating categories, there's G for general audiences. Usually these are like family oriented productions, and then you have PG, which is parental guidance. So something to bear in mind is that, like I said earlier, the production doesn't shy away from the fact that the real skeleton of the Grimm brothers' fairy tales are rather gruesome and violent. However, there is not really any gore in this. Instead, in those moments where the audience would be subject to a violent image or a violent scene, the episode is typically halted briefly by our chief narrators. There are 3 ravens as our chief narrators, and they act as a kind of guidepost and or yield sign for the audience, saying, one of the ravens will break the 4th wall and say, "Hey everybody, just so you know, something rather intense is going to come up." And I like that. I like that because even though I am giving this series praise, it is something to where parents do have to still make those strategic decisions, understanding their children and their tolerances and whether or not they're more or less sensitive to different materials. When the ravens give that, "Hey everybody, just so you know, this is gonna, we're coming up to a gruesome part here," I think that's a good heads up for the parents to determine whether or not that a scene is appropriate. If the parents want to screen this in advance, sometime when we were growing up, we got away with watching way more than we actually should. My brother and I, we watched rated R movies a lot of the time, at least that my mom didn't know about. But when we would watch movies together, okay, mom and dad said all right, boys, you're gonna have to just either look away or just leave the room entirely. Because once again, we watched a lot of PG-13 and rated R movies when I was much younger. But anyways, to top this all off, this series has a very respectable use of allegory and the old fable-like quality that fairy tales used to have. So why shouldn't you, Little Red Riding Hood, why shouldn't you talk to strangers? Hansel and Gretel, people may not always be what they seem. Fairy tales used to have a very utilitarian idea behind them, and that is lessons that could be imparted rather easily to children. Heavy-handed, yes, but all the same, the lessons would be put out there and be very easy to digest. With this, there's a number of themes and lessons in here regarding transgression, doing wrong against someone else, responsibility, friendship, loyalty, and accountability. I feel that especially for younger audiences, accountability is an extremely important lesson for children these days, and maybe even for a few adults too. Let's be honest with ourselves here. Eventually, without spoilers, eventually the characters are put into a position where they have to confront the traumas of their past. And it would be easy enough to just say, and then they lived happily ever after. However, Hansel and Gretel hold parties accountable for what has happened to them over the course of the series, and they demand answers. They demand that people be held accountable for their actions. And once again, like I said, great characters, great writing, excellent humor, and good lessons. So overall, this is a fantastic show, and I would actually highly recommend this for the Halloween season. Especially, this is such a good Halloween series, because you got witches, warlocks, devils, wolves, dragons. I mean, it's Halloween worthy. So, those are my thoughts on A Tale Dark and Grim. What do you guys think? Have you seen the series? What are your thoughts on it? Do you think I'm overhyping it a little bit? I don't think I am, but who knows? Do you think it's even stronger than I'm saying here? Please let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for joining me here on Movie Ninja, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.